The 5.0 character and weapon banners have been revealed! We're getting Mualani and Kazuha as the 5 stars, and Xinyan, Bennett, and Kachina as the 4 stars on the character banner. And the weapon banner has Surf's Up, Mualani's signature weapon, Freedom Sworn, Stringless, Dragonsbane, Sacrificial Fragments, Favonius Sword, and the Favonius Greatsword. And because I'll be out of the country for one of my Twitch mods' wedding as these banners are releasing, I wanted to bring you this banner review early since my streaming and video upload schedule will be kind of all over the place for a little while. I'll do my very best to keep everyone up to date on Discord, but for now I just wanted to let you know things are gonna be a little bit crazy for me. With that being said, let's dive in because there's actually some things a lot of people are not aware of with these banners. Let's review the character banner first, because it's kind of interesting just how much synergy there is, and then we'll talk about the weapon banner. So to start, the 5 stars Kazuha and Mualani are both great. I did a video about them already, so if you want a more in-depth understanding, go check out that video. But both Kazuha and Mualani are quite strong, and you can't really go wrong with either. Kazuha will have a lot more usefulness for more people, but Mualani will hit really hard, and she has a shark! So that obviously makes her very cool. What I really want to do though is go over the 4 stars and their overall value because they might be better than expected. Let's start with Kachina, which is a character that everyone can get for free, but is also a rate-up character on these banners. Kachina's kit revolves entirely around her little summon, just the way Fischl's kit revolves around Oz. Kachina will summon her little geo-friend Turbo Twirly with her elemental skill, and it does AoE geo damage even when she's switched out. Her elemental burst enhances Turbo Twirly and makes it have a larger AoE. This makes Kachina good in mono geo teams with Ito or Noelle, but also great for Navia. However, the new artifact set, Scroll of the Hero of Cinder City, or what I'll call Shock, because that's what I felt when I read it, will give up to a 40% elemental damage bonus, meaning that Kachina will also be great in non-Geo teams, but it also cements her as Navia's current best Geo support. We'll have to see how her overall kit and constellations actually perform on the live servers, but considering this artifact set exists, Kachina is going to be very useful at the start of Natlan, though I expect she will get power crept before too long. Next, let's move on to Xinyan, who is one of, if not the worst 4 stars of the entire game, but she actually does have some uses, and those uses happen to be for the 5 stars on this banner. The reason Xinyan is so bad is that her kit is just all over the place. It doesn't seem like she functions well in any team. There's pretty much always a better option than her, and to my knowledge, a passive that makes her shield from her elemental skill better is still bugged after almost 4 years. However, Xinyan does have one unique trait that can be helpful with the 5 stars on this banner, and that is that she applies pyro to you, aka your characters, because her shield applies pyro to your characters when you switch to them. So, you can use this to swirl pyro off of yourself with someone like Kazuha, which is really nice because you can actually use Kazuha, Xinyan, and Mualani in a team, and it will actually be good. You could also just use Xiangling instead of Xinyan, and it would be better, but at least Xinyan can be useful with these 5 stars, even if she doesn't really have a place anywhere else. And finally, we move on to Bennett, who is one of the best 4 stars in the entire game. He is extremely useful in so many teams as a healer and massive attack buffer. He also has the highest potential for elemental particle generation in the entire game, and his best constellation is his C1, which is really nice since most other 4 stars have their most powerful constellations locked behind their C6. Bennett is great in so many teams, and oftentimes if you don't know who to bring, often Bennett is just a great choice, and Bennett and Kazuha specifically are an incredible pairing, and honestly the two of them together are strong enough to take on just about any challenge by themselves. Bennett can also allow Kazuha to self-swirl pyro as his elemental burst applies pyro to the character standing in it. But Bennett's attack buff doesn't do anything for Mualani since her damage scales entirely from her max HP, and Bennett only enhances a character's attack. Bennett is the best character out of these 4 stars though, and the one with the most long-term value. Kachina is great specifically because of the new Natlan artifacts, but I think Kachina will become a lot more niche over time, whereas Bennett's value is still extremely high even after he was introduced 4 years ago. Now let's review the weapon banner, which is thankfully so much less of a trap going forward since we can set the fate points of the epitomized path to 1. And if you don't speak Genshin's convoluted jargon, that just means it will take a maximum of 160 wishes to get the weapon you want, instead of 240. Let's first look at Surf's Up, which is the signature catalyst weapon for Mualani. It's obviously great for her, enhancing her max HP and normal attack damage, but it's not really good for anyone else. Since she's responsible for about 90% of her team's damage though, her signature weapon is a very big boost to the overall team damage, but it is not necessary as she does have good free-to-play options like the Prototype Amber or the Natlan Catalyst, and even the Battle Pass weapon, the Sacrificial Jade, is really good on her, especially with high refinements, but you probably will overcap on crit rate if you give her the Sacrificial Jade. Since the weapon banner now requires you to wish less in order to get a signature weapon that you want, a lot of people think that it may be worth wishing for. But Mualani has good free-to-play weapon options already, so my suggestion is not to wish for her signature weapon immediately. Instead, build her first, play around with her for a while, and if you think it's worth spending up to 160 wishes for about a 25% boost in damage over free-to-play catalyst options, then by all means go for her signature weapon. Freedom Sworn is a good weapon for Kazuha, but totally not a necessary one. If you have the Favonius Sword, which is on the rate up banner, I recommend using that instead as it really helps with the high energy recharge requirements that Kazuha needs. Iron Sting is also a good free-to-play alternative, however, but you will likely need an energy recharge sands if you do go with the Iron Sting. And because the Freedom Sworn does not help with energy recharge, it means you run into the same problem with Kazuha using the Iron Sting as you do with his signature weapon. You probably need a lot of energy recharge, and that means that you're likely going to use an energy recharge sands on him. So while Freedom Sworn is a good weapon for Kazuha, it doesn't help with the issues he runs into as much as it is just a good stat stick for him. And for that reason, I would not rate Freedom Sworn as a very high priority 5-star weapon to try and wish for. Now let's move on to the 4 stars, which are kind of interesting here. We've got Stringless as the bow, which is good for several characters, including Fischl, Tighnari, and Venti, or really just about any character that appreciates elemental mastery, as well as skill and burst damage. The spear is the Dragonsbane, which is just a nice elemental mastery stat stick for several characters, like Hyperbloom Raiden, but of course it's also good for characters who are used in pyro teams that want that extra damage percent and also appreciate the extra EM, like Hu Tao or Reverse Melt Rosaria. The Favonius Sword is the best 4-star on this banner and arguably the best weapon on this banner, and if you do wish on this banner, hopefully you get a lot of these because they're just super useful because of their passive ability and the high energy recharge substat. The Sacrificial Fragments is a good catalyst, but it's a little bit more niche. It is great for Sucrose and Nahida, and it has very high EM, so it can also be used with any catalyst character that really appreciates that. It also opens up some fun builds, like Elemental Mastery Barbara or Kokomi in a Nilou team. The Favonius Greatsword is automatically a good weapon because that's how all Fav weapons are. Unfortunately, there are not too many characters that really want this because we just don't have that many support Claymore characters, and I'm pretty sure this is only here to make Xinyan feel more usable. Overall, these banners are not too bad. There's a lot of potential upside if you get a lot of the good characters on the character banner, and a lot of upside if you get the good weapons like the Favonius Sword on the weapon banner. However, you could still get copies of Xinyan over and over, or maybe a Dragonsbane that you have no use for, so there still is some risk involved here. At least the changes to the weapon banner and the fate point system make wishing on this weapon banner not so much of a trap, which is really nice. And overall, I think that is a huge win, especially if you want a signature weapon like Mualani's signature, the Surf's Up. But if you were considering Kazuha's signature weapon, I would advise that instead you just try to maybe do a few wishes and see if you get a Favonius Sword, because honestly that is one of the best weapons for him and one that I've been using for literally years on Kazuha and been very happy with. And as I talked about before, the 5 stars on these banners are actually quite strong, so if you are considering going for them, which I know a lot of people are, hopefully you get a lot of copies of Bennett's and then potentially Kachina as well. Bennett is extremely strong. I don't really need to talk about how good he is because everyone in the world does, but I think Kachina is actually going to be pretty good as well, at least initially. I don't know if she's going to have a lot of staying power and have a lot of long-term value, especially as more characters in Natlan come out, but I think initially at Natlan's release, she will be very strong, if for no other reason that she can hold the new artifact set, which is really good. But let me know who you're planning to wish for and if you plan to go for the weapon banner. It has a lot more value now that you don't need to spend as many wishes, but I'm still not quite sold on it. I am of course going for Shark Girl, and everyone wants me to C6 her, but I don't really want to spend that many Primo Gems, though I might get her signature weapon and maybe a constellation or two. I haven't really decided, we'll see how my wishes go. And I wish you all the best of luck. I hope you all win your 50/50s and get the 5 stars that you want early. Have a good one, everyone. Stay jawsome. I'll try to update you in Discord or in the community tab while I'm overseas, and I can't wait to see you when I get back.